Belvista Studios show.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Belvista Studios show. I am so excited today to have our founder, Kim Tuohy, on the show. So the Belvista Studios show is all around being curious, and it's about us looking at really cool examples out in the world, other people in the industry who've created really cool things for us to learn and be curious and to share it with you, our community. And I was thinking, and Kim often hosts the Belvista Studio show, and I thought Kim is so inspirational, and Kim, you inspire me so much and you taught me so much. Basically from the very start of my journey in instructional design, I've just learnt so much from you. And I just thought, why can't we have Kim on the show? Like, it'd be so cool to hear about everything that Kim knows, and I'm sure a lot of the community members would agree that it'd be great to hear what your skills are and what you've been doing and the type of projects that you work on. So welcome, Kim, to the Belvista Studio show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on set with you today.
So yeah, I'm so excited to hear about a project that you're going to showcase with us today. So to get started, what was the business problem that you were solving with this project?
Yeah, cool. So the example I'm going to share today, I think will be useful for people because it's an induction, and it's probably one of the common things that people want to do through e-learning. So I'm going to showcase an e-learning online induction that we made in our first year of business. So it's a few years ago now, but I loved working on that project at the time. I felt it was very meaningful, and I still am quite proud of it today. So what I'll do is I'm going to share my screen, and I've got lots of things to contribute and show how we got to the end result for this particular induction.
I'm excited.
Oh, don't look at that. Everyone will have a heart attack now looking at my desktop. So I guess the problem that we were engaged to do was that a client needed an induction. They were doing a face-to-face at the time, and they thought a very big organization, thousands of staff. They thought that it was inconsistent because they all had a different experience. Some of them couldn't go to the face-to-face until 6 months after they'd started. And then also it wasn't really delivered in a cost-effective way. So these were the problems that the client had identified. But I think that these are common problems for every client that kind of wants an induction, or a lot of decisions as to why people go to online learning and replace face-to-face. The other thing about being not cost-effective was that they had different presenters come in, and the presenters would do maybe a half-hour session or something, but they'd be traveling from other parts of the city to come in for that session. And so, you know, there's the time that they need to travel to get there. They tend to be people like directors and that, so they have a higher wage. And so, you know, you're paying these people to slip out, and is the return on investment for their time to get away from their day-to-day role that impactful on new starters? And then sometimes they couldn't turn up, which was another challenge. So people like directors, you know, they were scheduled to present, and the induction might run every fortnight, but, you know, things happen and they couldn't make it. So then there's this emergency, well, I wouldn't say it's emergency, but there's a scramble to figure out, okay, what do we do to fill this spot? So I guess I'll just highlight as well, like a lot of the information that I'll share today is from our case study, which is available on the Creator Hub, where we've actually gone through and explained how this corporate induction came to be. So a lot of the journey's on there. So that's why I want to just reference it in this way, so that you can kind of relate and find it yourself if you're interested in this case study at a later time. So yeah, basically they had a face-to-face induction, needed to improve to get consistent messaging out to their staff, and to do it in a cost-effective way.
Awesome. I can really relate to this that I've worked for, where we did have the face-to-face presenters, and it was so often that because it was leadership and because it was people who are really busy and have other things going on, it was so common for them not being able to come, and it would often be last minute. So I can totally relate to that. And I think there would be lots of businesses out there that could be experiencing problems like that. So yeah, it's awesome.
What would you like to know?
So probably for me, I think what I would like to know is how you created an induction that actually made a difference to the inductees. So how did you know what the inductees needed? Because I think that's so important for inductions. We can often forget who we're creating the induction for and just add what we think is important. But how did you discover what was important to the inductees?
Yeah, I guess this was an interesting place. So I had run inductions face-to-face for an organization that I used to work for in corporate land. And so I was very familiar with what inductions look like. At that point, I didn't know if that was right or wrong. But at the same time, around this time, I was learning about human-centered design. And it was talking about the value of asking and validating your ideas around things and not assuming, and also, going out and finding out what people actually need versus what we as experts thought that they needed. And so it was a curious place for me because I was learning and I could see the value, but I also had this, well, I've done an induction before, why don't I just pump it out the same way? But I think because the value was here, I was like, I'm going to experiment and see what this human-centered design type of thing is about. So a couple of the things that they were, it was new to me, was to understand your end user. So doing personas was a big thing that human-centered design talks about, and also talking to them. So doing interviews. So with this, I had, as part of the project plan, time in there for analysis. And we did actually, I went and sat in on the face-to-face induction to see what that organization's experience was like. And as I was sitting in, I was talking to the people at the table beside me, and I'm thinking, what do you think of that session? Was it valuable? So I'm getting all these insights where the organization thinks they're doing a great thing by pushing all this information at people. But what they were telling me in the room at that point was like, yeah, we know this. Like, I've been here for 6 months now. I've found it out myself, kind of thing. Or they're like, this is fine, but. So I was able to figure out and get some data around what they were finding useful and what wasn't useful. And then, so I really embraced the human-centered design process. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, but when I planned the project at the beginning, I booked in workshops with the client and was like, we're going to do a persona in this workshop, and I'm going to have time to interview end users, because that's what the human-centered design process told me. And so for those workshops, I had to go and figure out, like, how do you actually do those kinds of things? So it was a really, really, really valuable process, because a lot of the time with inductions, it's, here's our organizational structure, this is our mission and vision statement, this is all the information we think you need to know, like code of conduct, bullying and harassment, whereas it's not really. So I guess if I go through the, in here, you'll see we did personas, and it was a big thing about not making assumptions. And we use this template, you can just Google it, from designminds.org.au at the time. And you can see that it gives like, well, what's the name of the person, the age, the role, the description, the behaviors that we want that they will have, what are their needs, frustrations, skills. And so what I did was I went into the client thing and I facilitated a session and was like, you guys do personas, tell me about new starters, what's going on in their world. And we created them and we came up with these people that then gave me more insight to go, okay, this is who I need to design for. The other part of it was these user interviews. And what I understood from human-centered design was that I really needed to understand the experience. So I asked the client to give me the numbers, phone numbers of people that were in their probation period, so that I could get a true insight into the current experience of how new starters are supported across the department or the organization. And so what I did was, these were the questions that I asked. And what I think is really cool is that these questions, we ask them for all the inductions that we work on now. And what I'm finding is all inductions are kind of similar, and all organizations have the same issues for, how'd you feel on your first day? How'd you feel in your first week? What support did you get was useful and what wasn't useful? So what we identified is, the organization thinks in an induction space that they need to push information at the new starter, and that's how we're going to help them join our organization. But the new starter is like, oh my God, I'm starting a new job. I'm really nervous. What I care about in my new job is, am I going to fit into my new team? Am I boss? Am I going to like them? Are we going to get along? What's my role really going to be like? Because I've seen this advertisement on Seek or the job site, and I've done the interview, but like, is it going to be like the dot points that were mentioned there, or what's it actually going to entail? And so I guess the big thing that we identified through these user interviews and the human-centered design process was that new starters did not care about the organization at the beginning. And the reason why was because they had already made a decision to work there. They'd accepted the job. So they'd already done their own validation in terms of, I'm happy to work for this organization in this industry, and that's why I've accepted the job. So for them, in terms of their needs, it's ticks the box. They don't care about anything else the organization does at this point. What they do care is about the individual, the I. So we discovered, I guess, that if I just, because I'm talking, go back to me for a minute, is that it was about the I. So we illustrated this with our client. They care about me, what's important to me. And then what happened was there was a circle outside of that. What is important to me in terms of my team and my role? And then they cared about the organization. So we traditionally, I think it's the other way around, or inductions tend to go organization, your team and your role, and then you as an individual, if they care about that sort of part. So I think that was a real big eye-opener for us in terms of creating an induction. So then what we did was we go, okay, cool. Well, we've got this really great data. What does that mean in terms of an induction experience? So what we discovered was that we needed to make them feel comfortable as soon as possible so that they could settle in, and then they were equipped to contribute to their role better, and then the organization. So I guess what that, considering the person that is anxious, what that meant was that we said, okay, these people, we need to design an induction experience that focuses on the person, then the team and the role, and then the organization. So we actually said the induction needs to be split so that it focuses on that, so that their personal needs are met and they feel secure and comfortable in their role initially. Then when we get rid of that anxiety level and bring it down, they can start looking at, how am I going to contribute in my role? So what we did was we identified that there needed to be 4 learning hubs, or 4 learning modules, e-learning modules, that allowed a person to go on the journey in a time that they could fit it into their first week. So they didn't have to have it all done the first day, and we didn't want to overwhelm them. So we were like, you've got 4 modules to complete. It needs to be complete by the end of your first week, but fit it in around like the initial meetings or the things that you're asked to do when you join the organization. So I'm just going to take you through each of the topics that were covered in the 4 modules that they would complete. And so we built it in Articulate Storyline 2 at the time, because 3 or 360 weren't out. So this is basically what we call the learning hub, or it was the menu, I guess. So the topics that we speak about are, you get to learn about the organization. So it's basically a welcome. Welcome, you've joined Belvista Studios, and we're so excited to have you here. So a reassurance that we are grateful that you've joined the team. The next thing, and you can do these in any order, and the reason is we want to give people control and choice. What do they actually care about? So get to know your work area. This one, it's because it's legislated, they have to do this in their first week. So we had to put it into module 1 so they make sure they get it done, which is basically just emergency procedures. And then another thing that people quite often care about is, when do I start, finish, and what are my break times? So these were very much, as you can see, around the individual. Now, if I go into module 2 somewhere.
On that one, so get to know my work area. What sort of information would be in that section?
Get to know my work area. Well, let me find the answer to that question, Hannah. So
organizations, there's people can work in lots of different areas. So yeah, I'm just wondering how you could do that for an organization so it's applicable to all inductees.
Yeah, great question. Well, I guess, look, you can see that there was the 4 topics. You can see now how it branches out. So scene 1, which was learn about our organization, that's it, that's the scene. But here we go for topic 2, 3, and 4, which is get to know my work area, the emergency stuff, and my breaks, and that are literally one screen of e-learning. So
wow.
In that is, I'm just going to bring it up in a different one because it is client files, so I don't want to disclose stuff, but this is the quest, what we called them, which I can explain, but this is literally get to know your work area. So if you want to meet people and get to know things in your business area, such as where to make yourself a hot drink, then this is the quest for you. So it's the why should you care about this topic, which is up here, and then this is the thing you need to do. So we didn't want, I was learning it, well, at the time, I was really into action mapping. That was like the key thing that I knew as an instructional designer about 1 year into life as an instructional designer, or maybe 2 years. And now we kind of live and breathe that. But what I was like, they don't need all this information, they need to do things. So what did they need to do to get to know their work area? And as you say, how can this be applied for so many different teams, so many different business areas that are all contributing to a bigger mission, but they're very siloed or they don't link well? And it was basically arrange a meeting with your team member, and you can do it in person or through Outlook because they used Outlook. And you can use the details in step 2 as a guide. So what did we want them to do in the meeting? We wanted the person in your team, because we wanted to build connection in the team. We wanted them to have a friend, a buddy, someone that made them feel comfortable, that they could ask questions to. So we're building a relationship. So ask your friend or your team member to introduce you to key people within the business area. Where can you go and make tea and coffee? You know, where are the toilets? This kind of stuff. And then recommend good places to eat lunch. So the person, what we think would happen in these kinds of conversations that we're enabling is that team member is going to be like, oh, you know, this is how things run around here. This is what we do. That's Margaret. She does blah, 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 blah. This is Johnny. You know, he's such a laugh. If you ever have questions about, you know, XYZ, you should go talk to him. So we basically wanted all that kind of, I guess, tacit knowledge and cultural ways of being within their particular business area to be communicated through a peer that they could build a relationship with.
I love that. I love how you focused it on each individual, because like we were saying before, everyone's going to be in a different environment. They're going to be in a different team. They could be in a different building. But I feel like you've done an amazing job here because you've enabled them to get to know their specific area through action. Yeah, that's so cool. Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome.
That's all good. So going back to the topics then, I think this is module 2. Yeah. So in here we had, we're now still focusing on the individual, but how they contribute in their role. So this one is really good, I think, where it's another quest, it's 1 page, and it encourages them to book a meeting with their supervisor, where they find their role statement or position description, and that's internet tends to be, or they can email someone to find it, maybe email HR if they haven't been provided it, because it normally comes in your new starter paperwork. And what they do in that quest, and it looks the same as this, I just don't want to bring it, it looks exactly the same. It'll be like, book a meeting with your supervisor. You need to print out your role statement, write questions that you have to get the expectations clarified to you and go have that conversation. So what we're trying to know that performance issues in an organization happen because expectations aren't clarified up front. So people think they're doing their role fine, and they think they're contributing in the way that they need to. People that lead those people or supervise them don't have the courage to say, hey, that's not what that looks like here, or you're not meeting the expectations, so therefore you're actually underperforming. So we have this disconnect where the communication doesn't happen, and then it comes into like the terrible stuff. Not terrible stuff, but the unfortunate situation where a person isn't contributing in the way that they need to, but they've never been told the way that they need to. So we wanted to go, let's not have that happen down the track. Let's make sure this is communicated up front, so we set the standard from the very beginning. So they go and have this conversation with their supervisor. They're able to ask questions. The supervisors are able to say, this is what it looks like, you know, this is what I need you to do to be able to contribute in the team. And then it was the values. So in this particular example, everyone always wants to show the values. I can't show the values for this company, but what we had was, actually, let me just see if it.
I'm thinking, Kim, as you're talking through this, I love this project because I feel like it focuses more on the outside world. So I think with e-learning, sometimes we think it can be really restricted to, like, you're stuck reading what's on the screen and the whole experience happens digitally on the screen. But I feel like something really good that you've done with this project is you've thought, how can I get people to get out and about in their environment, and you've encouraged people to do things in the real world, which I think is where a lot of the value can happen. So yeah, is that from action mapping, do you think, that you learnt that?
I think so. What does it look like? And I guess the CAF model, which is an Allen Interactions, another Belvista Studios show episode, talks about that. And it's about replicating the real world. And my understanding is that we can replicate the real world in e-learning, and this is how you do it. And in this instance, we created quests, and the quests always meant that you were doing something outside of the e-learning. So you're booking a meeting and you're going to talk to someone, and then you would come back to the e-learning to continue. So it is. How do you replicate the real world? Well, I can't build relationships by doing it in here. I can give you the skills and I can enable that to happen, but you need to go do it. So that's where that came from. So the quests are integrated throughout, and they make someone go outside the e-learning to make it happen.
Yeah. So as well, when you had resources, because I think sometimes it's easy, say there's like a policy, you might feel like you need to go through that policy and include it in the e-learning, all the important parts. I think something I noticed that you did with this project is you just said, like, click this link to view the policy, and the way that they viewed the policy is how they would do it in the real world outside of the e-learning. So that's probably another tip as well. You need to include the information of all these policies and the org chart. You can literally just direct them to the place that they can find it in the real world. So I think that's another really great way of doing it.
I wonder if I have an example of that in one. Let me just figure it out, because I'll show you what that looks like.
And how do you think with human-centered design, I know that's what you used to create this project, do you think that helped you only include or add the important information? Because I've noticed with this course, there's not a lot of text, where some inductions can be quite text heavy. Did the human-centered design process help you narrow down what you needed to include on each screen, or was there something else that?
Yeah, I think it's the starting point. So it helps you to identify what the user needs. And so they were the things that we talked about from the case study in terms of, help me feel comfortable. Where can I go for support? Well, what else is in there? I don't know. Whatever they were worried about. Oh, my lunch breaks. How do I know I'm doing a good job? So they tell us that, which means that we've got all these things that we need to tick off. Then it's about using things like action mapping to identify what is the need to know information that helps someone understand what their break times are. And that might look like, in our organization, that's the same for everyone. And you can find information on the intranet, and this is how you find information on the intranet. You've gone and found the times and break times. It's the same, 10-minute morning tea, an hour for lunch, whatever it is. Or if it's different, you need to speak to your supervisor because your part of the business is different, and that's how you're going to find out that information. But like, we don't need to break down what a break is and what happens if you go over, because then we're kind of enabling bad performance, and we're saying we don't trust you and you're going to go over your break times. So the question, it's almost like an FAQ. Where, like, what are my break times? What are my start times? It's 8 till 4 p.m. Done. Topic, need to know information is sorted. So yeah, it was the human-centered design allowed us to know what was important to the end user, and then action mapping allowed us to identify what is the need to know information to achieve the user's needs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have an example of what you're talking, like, that I can show, but it basically was, I think, a big thing for all inductions is we want to bombard with bloody policies and all the information. What's the social media policy? What's our bullying and harassment policy? And it's like, well, people bloody know this stuff, but they're not doing it. Why are they not doing it? All that. So you can tackle that separately. But if people need to know information, what we need to enable them to do is to seek the information when it's relevant to them. So if we think about something like policies, which tend to be bombarded and they're just repeating in the e-learning the same thing that's in the policy, why would you do that? So what we want to do is enable people to seek help when they need it. So what does that look like? Well, it looks like everything sits on our intranet. So if they have a question, that's their first point of contact. So how do we train that? And in those quests, you would have seen there's like a little tutorial button that says, how do I send a meeting invite? And that links off to the intranet to go to the page. So now we're reinforcing the behavior through the e-learning of, if you need help, go find something on the intranet because it's most likely there. And then if it's not there, you can ask a team member or your supervisor. So we did things like that. And that's why it's quite, there's not a lot of text, or they're not huge modules, because they can all be completed within 10 minutes. Seek support. That's what we want them to be, self-sufficient, because people aren't idiots. They know, like, if I need to know, like, my leave, they're going to go, okay, what leave am I entitled to in the intranet? Oh, okay, it says this many days. Cool. Or who can I ask questions of how much leave I have left? Oh, that on the intranet, it says contact HR, or look up the system where the data is available to me. So you don't have to go, and they don't need to know that right now either. Like, they're probably not looking up the study assistance policy or anything like that. They just need to know these are the benefits that are available to you. When you're ready, go explore them in 3 months when you might be curious about, I want to do a degree and it's going to help me in my role, and what support are you going to be able to do?
I think it's really good that you did too, because I think the language can have a big impact on the way people perceive the company and the culture and the feeling that they get when they start in an organization. And I think if you do, I love the way you've done it, because if you just put information about policies and it's really like if you think about reading like a privacy policy or the terms and conditions, you read it for a little while and then your eyes start glazing over and you're thinking, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's so, it's really hard to concentrate on it. And I think if you make your inductees read information like that, they can get really firstly, you don't trust me. Like, it's so, you have to do this and you have to do that. It's not like a nice feeling.
Yeah.
And also, I think most people wouldn't be reading it word for word and actually gaining any value from it. So I love that you've really thought about the real world and thought, okay, so this is a policy, but what do people really need to do? Like, what's the actions that's them? And communicating it in a really simple way with nice language that reflects the culture. And it's really cool.
It's not a place, an induction is not a place to shove all the possible information at a person. And that's why I think for things like bullying, harassment and code of conduct in this one, we actually don't cover them. But what we say is we have a policy, go check it out. And if people or organizations actually care about bringing down bullying harassment numbers or whatever breaches of the code happen within their organization, they will treat that as a separate initiative that focuses on the actions and behaviors that need to be solved because it's a business problem.
Yeah. Cool. Well, could you show me the course? Because I've just got a few questions. I love the look and feel of it.
Yep.
And I'll just have a chat to you around how you created that.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So I guess I'll just show quickly the other topics, and then I'll show you some of the things that we did within it. So what is this one? This one's module 3, because if we go back to, we were talking about the micro learning and how the topics were broken down. This is module 3.
So just on that as well, like you broke it into different modules. Is that what they needed in the moment, or like?
Yeah, so if we think about going back to the individual, the me, the I, is module 1 and 2. Is module 1. Number 2 then is the role, which we saw, like, how do I contribute, the role statement quest, things like that. Then module 3 and 4 go to the organization. So treating others as equals, superannuation, all the stuff that is not an immediate need to the individual in their first couple of days, but they probably have questions about it early on, but not on day 1 or 2. They're happy to look at it at day 5. So can I join the union? What's my salary? Superannuation. And then in module 4.
And more outer, like at the beginning, it's like, what do I need as an individual? What's my immediate needs? Like, what time do I start? Where do I get a coffee? Who are the people on my team? And then once you've figured that out, you can sort of say, okay, I'm ready for more information now. Like, what does the organization offer, and what are the value, and those sort of things. It's sort of like, it sounds like it's sort of like a step-by-step process of evolving.
Yeah. It's almost like their anxiety has been diminished, and now they're more open to what else is out there. So who are the leaders in my organization? Can I volunteer? What are, like, the conversations, like performance conversations, what do you call them, like the appraisal sort of conversations that happen, development conversations, what benefits, can I do study leave, can I do things like that, carers leave, all that stuff that's not an immediate need for the person, and then the extra support obviously as well. So that is that journey. I guess some of the things in terms of like what we did to show you like the look and feel now. So if I I'll go back to this quest, which was get to know the work area. At the time, I thought this was like really cute. So I'll break down the look and feel at the moment. But one of the things, like, I loved like how things appear on screen, and we're trying to get people to digest the information. They're not overwhelmed. It's not highly advanced. I wouldn't say like this is like, oh my God, groundbreaking e-learning, but we did try to like think about graphic design principles and the psychology of how you communicate information and hierarchy on the screen so that it could be digestible. So you see that like step 1 appears, then 2, then 3, because if you look at the screen immediately, you could be overwhelmed, but the way that it appears, and I'll just replay it, it kind of goes, this is important first, then you've got something to do here, and it breaks down that way. And then one of the things that I like is, when you finish the quest, you earn your little diamond. I think this is around the time of gamification, game mechanics, and learning from that world were coming in, and I just was like, how do we do that? Actually, a big influence of this module was it was around the time when Pokemon Go came out. So I'm going to show you like the original look and feel, so you can see. Sorry, one sec.
Yeah, I feel like when I look at the screen, it's not overwhelming. I can see exactly what I need to look at it. And it is like, you look at the title and then you like read that first white box. And I like how that box gives you the why. So it sort of motivates you to be like, okay, this is why this screen exists. It's not going to waste my time. And then it goes into the step by step. So yeah, it's been done really well.
Yeah.
Oh.
So as I said, like Pokemon Go was really big at the time. So I was like, okay, well, you know, what is it about Pokemon Go that people are getting into, you know, mobile games again, and they're continuing with it and they're hooked? It has to be something to do with the design, the user interface, and obviously there's a lot of nostalgia for many people around Pokemon itself. So I went on the internet and just Googled, like, what does it look like? Because I didn't have the app, but I knew the hype was there. And so I look for things in the world that are hooking people now. Like if we talk about today's world, it'd be things like Netflix. You know, what is Netflix doing that that is people are binging and consuming stuff? And I know that's inspired another project that we're working on at the moment. How can we educate through entertainment? And we're taking that in. So what in the world is hooking people and people are obsessed about, and how can we bring that into our learning experiences? You can see, like, I love, like, you know, this kind of gradient happening in the background there, the little cards and the buttons. Like, I just love the colors. I think one thing that I continuously find with e-learning is a good first impression of the visual look and feel is really key. When I look at ads on the side of a bus, when I look at, and maybe I'm more attuned to this, but I see things out and I'm always like, why did that catch my attention? And it's always the visual appeal. It might be this beautiful, bright color image. So I look for things like that and I go, okay, how can we use them? So I liked this, like, kind of something in the middle, not necessarily a Pokemon, but something in the middle, the hierarchy, the heading, and then information down below. I loved, at the time, the client, when they initially put the brief out, it was, we want this gamified. So I guess that's another reason why Pokemon Go was an influence. So I loved, like, okay, well, earning points is kind of something that comes with gamification and rewards. And then this could be quite cool of, like, they earn little diamonds and they can see what they have to continue to go and find, you know, this, you've earned something or you've won, you know. So I'm looking for influences of design. And then I kind of just like the color scheme here. And then go on to Google and I'm like, what else of this kind of design is out there? I can't remember if this one's from Google or if it's from Shutterstock, but that's where I go. And I'm creating, what I'm doing here is I'm getting a mood board. What is the look and feel that I'm going to create based on this? So I really like the buttons here. Thought the little shadow was quite cool. We weren't doing a mobile solution, but I kind of always get brought back to these little cards with the rounded corners, the buttons like this where they look like you can touch them, you know, you can pick them up and eat them almost. What else is here?
I love how you look for things as well. I think that's such a good idea because there are so many things if you actually pay attention, there are certain things that grab your attention, like whether it's an ad on YouTube or something you see on TV. And I think sometimes we forget to go, oh, like, why did that grab my attention? But it sounds like you've sort of got a lens or a filter where you can say, okay, like, this could be really good for our training. So I think that's a really good tip as well, to be aware of what grabs your attention.
Yeah.
And I can see design sort of, I can see it, not completely, but there's like little elements where I'm like, oh, I can see where it's come from.
The influence is there. Now, what I want to show you is, like, the first iteration of the design. Oh God. And it's it's funny. So the first part of it is, like, the client really wanted this gamified. It was really important that it looked, that people earn. They said gamification. This was the problem. I needed to clarify what that actually meant to them. So I went and created a visual look and feel as part of my process. It was based on this mood board that I'd created. And they said, this needs to be gamified. And I'm like, sweet, I can do that. So I need to find the first kind of iterations. Yeah, I don't know how it's going to look. Okay. So I started finding things like, you know, the diamonds. Actually, well, we did use them in the end. I looked at, on Shutterstock, I'm looking for game elements, and they have, like, little user interfaces. This is what the game score screen will look like. This is the intro screen. I really love the diamonds. They're actually the diamonds that end up in the end thing. We had, so if you think about gamification, you think of a quiz. So I was like, well, these characters are beautiful. Like, I love the art style on them. I thought they were like quiz masters, so they could come in and give tips and pointers for people. So I had those characters in there. Again, they're from Shutterstock.
Yeah.
Just trying
I
to.
think it's a good thing to show people, because I think sometimes when you see an end product, you're like, oh, like, how did someone design something that amazing? Like, how would I ever do that? But this process shows that it is a step-by-step process, and it does start off with just grabbing little elements from different things.
Yeah.
And you can't expect to get it perfect the first time around. It reminds me of when we had Nicole on the show. Shout out to Nicole. She was awesome. But when she was talking about the shitty first drafts, when like the first thing that you write isn't going to be perfect, and as long as you can get something there and then work with that. And I think that's really stuck with me, that you just need to put something out there. And I can see the process that you've taken from grabbing different elements, and the end product is just awesome. So it's cool to see you got to that.
Yeah, and I think it's so true. Like, you have to iterate basically, and don't take offense to that. It's not a personal attack or a personal you did a shit job because it's not hitting the mark. So you need to detach yourself from it and think about the outcome. What's the intent? What's the goal that we're trying to achieve? And it is something that is going to be it's appealing to the audience, and it's user friendly to the audience.
Yeah, definitely.
So, okay, so first iterations, I'm trying to bring in the characters. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, also, there's similar elements.
Yep, so we got the diamond going. I was thinking header because that's normally what's in e-learning. So I was influenced by like that, which is wrong. I tried like the yellow buttons, which we saw in the example, you know, with the little shadow. So I'm testing that out. And then I was like, well, I need some kind of pop thing. So that's where that came in. This was like a quiz thing. So you can see I've brought in the little dude now. I'm like, he's the quiz master. I'm asking a question. This is what I think it's going to look like. Again, the little elements that I brought, you know, earn your badges, or if you need a hint, hit continue. So I'm playing with some of the fonts. And what was really cool, what I loved initially about this client was that they had really nice colors. So it was all the bright poppy colors. So this pink is theirs, the orange was theirs, the yellow. So they have kind of like a rainbow to choose from. So it wasn't like your traditional, you need a blue and a black and a gray or something. So I was like, I think I got caught up in like the wonderland of, oh my God, we have cool colors to use. And then so
I was going to ask, like, it looks, a lot of e-learning is like traditional company colors. Like, it's either like, I don't know, it doesn't look like what you've ended up with as a template. To me, looks like you've just been able to choose whatever you like. And I was just wondering, company colors in your final template, or?
Are they the company colors? Yes, they are. So you'll see that they have these kind of bright colors, but what we ended up with was the yellow and the black and the white. So we toned it down. And the reason is because I went to the client with all these bright ones, and I remember sitting in the meeting and I opened it up and they were just like, oh God, that's not what we wanted. And I was like, what do you mean? And it was really interesting because this was my interpretation of gamification, bright poppy stuff, which was not what they wanted. And so we had to have a conversation of what is it? And so then it evolved further. So they didn't like this. They were like, we don't really like the animation style. It's not going to resonate with our audience. So we had to scrap the quiz guys. It was too to the extreme of what they were used to in their e-learning. They had very corporate e-learning. This went too crazy to the other end. So then I was tasked with going away and, you know, refine it. So if I look at, I'm just going to see. It then became, no, not that one. It then got this more polished look. And if we look at the influences from before, you can see the little white cards with the rounded corners coming in. You can see the buttons, the square buttons with the shadow underneath. So, and then I still wanted to use their poppy colors. I love the gradient, remember? So I'm like, I want to work that in. So I started playing with the gradients to bring in the colors.
It's really nice.
And then I was like, well, what if they don't want the gradient? So then I went back basically and give them like all these,
Wow.
Sorry, I need to get rid of this stuff.
Did you present a number of different options to the client so you could understand what they were looking for?
Yeah. So I went back. So initially they saw this kind of stuff. Then I went back with a more mature look, which was that gradient look that we've just looked at. This one. And then they said, oh, look, it's closer, but can we get rid of the bright colors? And then that's where it got into this, like, let's really tone it back. Let's just choose one bright color. We'll use yellow, and then we'll use the black and white. And then, as you can see in the e-learning, like, that is the theme then that we ended up with.
Yeah. So I guess that to me is a good lesson, that it's easy to feel almost like offended or upset that the client doesn't like the design, but it really is a process, isn't it? Like, you need to, it's all about getting to closer to what they want, and what you might think might be really different, but over time you begin to understand what they're looking for and what their culture's like and what sort of vibe they're going for.
Yeah.
I think that's a good tip for designers out there, to not be disheartened. It's just part of the process.
And I think 2 tips for that is, 1, ask the client what they like. Have you got any internal examples that you are really resonating with the business or people within the business? Send me them so I know what they look like. And what do you like from the internet? What apps do you like? What websites do you like the look and feel of? So I let them tell me, and then I get a vibe. Because they said gamification, which when they described that to me was bright colors, fun, But their gamification, bright colors, all that kind of stuff, that language wasn't aligned with obviously what it ended up being. So I needed them to not tell me, sorry, because the telling was where the miscommunication happened. I needed them to show me. So show me what those words look like in your mind.
Yeah. Good point. Because what and mean can be 2 completely different things, and we've all got different perceptions. Like, even with animation, for example, if the client's like, oh, I want it to be animation, and you could be thinking animation is creating like the Beyond characters and it's like a cartoon on the TV, but by animation they might think that the text flies in, but it's just got like real life photos, but
exactly
in animation. So you could spend all this time and then realize. So I think that's a really good point, getting them to show you exactly what they mean. All right, getting to the end of the show, but I've just got another question. There was really cool quotes on the hub, and I like elements like that. That sort of motivates people and inspires people. But I've found that sometimes clients don't want that extra, sort of sometimes perceived as fluffy additions. And I just wanted to know how you were able to, was the client like happy for you to add things like that, or was that hard to, tell me about that.
I guess what we understood, again, another thing that we learnt was, I think at the time I must have watched a couple of years before, actually, I had watched Simon Sinek Start With Why. And that's where I got a real appreciation for the why is so important. And I'm transferring those skills to the why of the learning. So I wanted to have a compelling opening to speak the culture, to clarify the expectations, to encourage the values and the behaviors that this organization wanted up front in the modules, and to set the context for the module. So when we think about the micro modules, they each had an objective. And so we identified quotes that were specific to set the expectation, communicate the organization's like behaviors that they're trying to get from the people. So we identified quotes, and they all open with a something like this. So this is the very first one. So move out of your comfort zone. You cannot grow if you're not willing to feel awkward when trying something new. So we are speaking to the new employee who's going, I'm anxious. Am I going to fit in? Oh my God, I'm the new person. I hate being the new person. So we're kind of acknowledging how they're feeling, but we're saying it's okay to feel like that, but just give yourself a little push. Move out of your comfort zone today. And so we had these quotes in there, and on the last screen of the module as well, another quote comes up to end it in a similar way. So each module had a quote at the beginning and at the end relevant to the topic. And so I love this kind of stuff. I love looking at quotes. I know we send each other quotes and stuff, and they add value to my life. So I guess I was definitely trying to influence things that work for me as a human into the module to work for others. And I guess I was trying to influence the client that this didn't need to be a conventional e-learning of what everyone else expects e-learning to be like. So I think two reasons it was accepted in was, the first reason was the client was in all of the workshops. They were in the persona workshops. They got the data after the interview. So they were really on board with how people felt about starting a new job. So from that perspective, they had the buy-in to go, we understand and acknowledge now that people are nervous, and we need to think about their experience coming in here as opposed to the experience we're pushing on them. So that was a really good way to influence them as to why the quotes were important. Now, I don't remember having a conversation of, we're going to have quotes that open the module. But what I did was, when we storyboarded the module, it was there. There was a quote on the opening screen. And because they had already been through the process and had an appreciation of their end user, it obviously just made sense that it was there. So I didn't have to persuade them. So I had identified quotes that I felt was all good. And then what I think they came back with was, we have these people within our organization or these leaders across the world that we kind of speak to in our workshops. So although we like the idea of the quotes, but what we'd like to do is just, we just say Brian Tracy, I think he's like a sales kind of guy, maybe leadership. We use him in some of our other organizations as examples, in our other training as examples. So we'd like to bring him in as the quote person. And so we just did things like that. So I don't remember there being quotes, there being pushback. There has been pushback with other clients and saying, we love it, but our stakeholders hate it. Because a lot of the time you'll find like the learning and development, organizational development teams love this kind of stuff. But then they bring it to their stakeholders and they're like, ooh. So I guess they need the buy-in. They need to understand why they're there. But that's also user feedback. It's opened to them and they've had pushback. Maybe they don't like it. So you got to be careful with your feedback. Is it one person's bit of feedback because they've had a personal trigger and they don't like it? Or is it what the majority of people are saying? And so, look, you can't always win things, and it's not always right for audiences, and you have to accept that. So some people, we have to take these kinds of things out.
I think it's important. That's when user testing can come in as well. And I know that's something that we do for some projects. And I think you can sort of get I know everyone's going to be different, but as a whole group, if you can get some sort of indication of whether it fits or it feels right for the scenario, I think that's really important as well. But yeah, that was awesome. I think we've sort of come to the end of our time, and I feel like we could talk forever around this. It's such a cool project, and I think me personally, like, I've learned so much about induction programs from you sharing this project with me. So thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about it.
That's right.
Just go. So I think this episode will be really useful for people who are designing an induction or are in charge of updating or improving their induction. We about heaps of great things, but what would be your top tips for anyone out there who is designing an induction?
Well, I think you need to think of the individual, not the organization. So what's important to get someone up being self-sufficient as quickly as possible. So you need to lower their levels of anxiety about starting a new job, make them feel comfortable. This is where the toilet is. This is where your start times are. All those immediate questions, you need to answer them so that they can relax. And then they can be open to, how can I contribute? Because I want to be a good employee. I want to do my best job. I just don't know how. So you need to show me. You need to show me what this looks like in action. And then where can I go for help? Where is it? The internet? Who can I ask? So you just need to point them to be self-sufficient. So get them comfortable. Think of them. They want to contribute in a positive way. How? What does that look like? And then where do they go for help? And I have to say, for every induction we've done since, it is the same story. It is a rinse and repeat. They are the things. They do not change. The only time it changes is if we're not able to influence our client to understand that the end user is important, not the organization dumping information on them. So if you download the case study, you will get more insight into that kind of human-centered design approach to it. But every single induction now is the same. It is make them feel comfortable. What does that look like in our context? And basically, how can they contribute in their role? Set the expectations, clarify that so they know, because they want to do a good job. They want to contribute. They just need to know how. And then where do they look for support? And I think that's essential. It's transferable to all inductions. I think it's basically a framework now for the amount that we've done. It always comes back to those things.
That's awesome. Thank you, Kim. Is there anything else you would like to end with before we end the show today?
I think I just wanted to show like one thing, which was the leader videos. So quite often, you know, organizations want people to know who the director of X is, and they think they're the most important people. And what the challenge sometimes workers have is they put this barrier of hierarchy in there. They're a director, I'm an officer, or whatever it is. We are so far apart. So they go, I can't talk to them if I'm in the lift, or I can't ask them for help. Or I think a big challenge is that, you know, we have to think in an organization we're all working together to achieve the same goal. So even though I may have been in the past a training officer, I'm employed as the training officer or advisor because I'm the best person in the organization to give tips and advice and guidance on that to the organization. Just because a director is paid more and I'm in a higher position on the organizational development, organizational structure, doesn't mean that they know the answer to this, and they probably don't. And that's the reason I'm employed in that position. So what we needed to do was help people speak up and know that their individual role is valuable, and that's why you've been hired, and that you should be able to voice your opinion, give your guidance, share your perspective, no matter who you are talking to, because we value you as an individual. So one of the challenges that we wanted to overcome there was we needed to close the gap on that hierarchy and show that the people in the organization, we're all humans. At the end of the day, no matter what we do and how we contribute, we are all people and we can relate as people. So one of the things that we did was we created these videos, and I obviously can't show the client videos, but we had done it for our team, and this is where the idea came from, was that we created these videos to humanize the people. So I'm going to play a video of me from back in the day, 2017. The idea of this was that we could just go, they're just like us, right? Short videos.
What is your favorite childhood memory?
Making go-karts and riding skateboards and bikes with the kids on the street.
Where were you born?
Ireland.
What place would you like to visit most?
Everywhere.
What is your favorite book?
Life of Pi by Jan Martel.
What is the single greatest thing about working at Belvista Studios?
I get to combine my two passions, which is creativity and enabling people to realise their potential.
What is your favourite type of food?
Pizza.
What is your favourite TV show or movie of all time?
Modern Family.
Great choice. Scariest thing you've ever done?
Jumping out of a plane, skydiving.
What is the most exciting thing you've ever done?
All the travel.
Who is someone that inspired you to be the best version of yourself?
My sister.
What are you grateful for?
Living.
What's your favourite animal?
I do not like animals unless they're in a zoo.
Best advice you've ever gotten?
Live every day to the fullest.
And who are you?
I'm Kim and I'm the founder of Belvista Studios.
So what we had there was, I created a list. Well, actually, what's your reaction to that video? I haven't watched it in a while now. I'm like, oh my God.
Cool. I feel like, because I know you, it's hard already, but I feel like if I'd watched a video like that with my new leader or leadership that I didn't know yet, I think it does definitely break the barrier down and see them more as humans. So rather than seeing them as like, oh, they're the CEO or they're the director, and being like having that bit of fear around them, like that is like really human. And it's also like, imagine if you're in the lift or something with them, you'd have a speaking point.
Exactly.
Like you could be like, oh, you don't like animals, or like whatever it is, and sort of know something about them and have that bit of information about them. But yeah,
exactly.
It's so cool.
So that was the objective. And so how that worked was, that was filmed on a mobile phone, holding it like that. And that's what we did. We didn't need a big production. We just literally picked up the phone and recorded. So I had a list of questions. The leaders came in to be filmed. They didn't know. I just basically came up with the idea in the moment. I had probably 10 questions, and each person I asked different questions to. And what it was really cool as, because normally they're so prepared, right? They've got this speech written for them or whatever it is. So this did humanize them because they made mistakes or they got nervous themselves. So we were able to kind of break down that they are human, and again, had talking points and stuff. So we did that for some of the key people across the organization to help with that.
That's really cool.
That's kind of all I got to share, I think, from that particular induction. But as I said, it's like almost a rinse and repeat now for them. Like, I guess all the work that went into this project allows us to know that it's proven, because we got really good feedback on it as well, in terms of people, the support, their needs were met earlier, they knew what they needed to do. So I guess the results of the training were quite important. We could tell it added value from the feedback we got from people that went through the induction. We also got people that went through the face-to-face when I sat in it to be user prototypers, and get their feedback because they'd done the face-to-face. So how did this compare? So I got really good feedback. So now we know it was a proven thing that we could just apply to any induction experience.
That's awesome. I feel like there's so much value in this episode, from human-centered design and talking about personas and interviews and understanding what that inductee needs, and then figuring out what sort of information they need over time, and the design and look and feel. There's just so much value, and I think it will be so helpful for people out there who are creating an online induction program. So thank you so much, Kim.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Finally, because you're always the one interviewing others, so it's great. I've written down all of the resources, so they'll be shared in the comments. So the persona tool and all of the different resources that Kim mentioned, you'll have access to that in the comments. But thank you so much for being on the show, Kim. You are an absolute legend and you inspire me, and I'm sure you inspire a lot of people in our community. So thank you for being on the Belvista Studio show.
Thank you.